Okay. Good morning, everybody. This is Guy Medkiff with Big Mike Interviews and Commentary coming from Washington, Missouri. I have Jeff Mohesky in here today. Jeff, how you doing, buddy?
Good morning.
So, what ward are you running for?
I am running for Ward 2.
And tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Born and raised here in the city of Washington, 43 years old. Married to my lovely wife, Marina. We've got 3 children. We've got, my oldest is 12, my youngest is 7. Self-employed here in town, own a business here in town right around 20 years. What else can I tell you?
You know, before the interview began, we were talking upstairs about family.
Mm-hmm.
And you made some comments that I found to be pretty interesting. Describe to me your concept of family, how it works into the community, and how you value.
Yeah, well, we had talked about one of my biggest things was our family. And I really believe that one thing that I can bring, and I'm sure my opponent can too, he's been around here a long time, was we have a concept of community in this city. Our kids are really important to us, and just having that, I'm 40 plus years old, I have a whole concept, a mind frame of,
By the way, that's what we say. We say plus when we don't want to tell you exactly. It's sometime after
I will tell
40.
you I'm 43 to be exact. But yeah, 43, But I think at that age, when I was younger, and I'm glad I've done this now, it's all about maturity and growing. But, when I was younger, our talk was about when we were 28, when we were younger, we have a different philosophy, a different mindset of what we got now. Back then we were looking at partying, we were looking at hanging out with our friends, we were looking at just things of that nature. Now that we're older, and you and I are kind of the same in that aspect, as we had our kids older and later in life, which to me was a blessing. Back when I was 20ish and things of that nature, I'm glad I didn't have my kids back then, because we were just in a different mind frame. So my whole philosophy and my mind frame right now is just a matter of what can we do for good for the city, what kind of things can we have for our children. I look at this community, and I look at the city of Washington as my kids growing up and having the same atmosphere and having the same city and the same town and the same feeling that I had when I grew up. So when I'm running for council, when I'm doing these things, and when I ran for mayor, it was a matter of just wanting to do the best I could. Not that I had all the answers, but to do the best I could to help this community stay the way it is. So we just have a different mindset.
One of the first questions I always like to ask is, why are you running?
Ran for city council. Really enjoyed that. Very positive feeling. Very positive feedback on that. Made some mistakes along the way, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it, doing it so much that I thought, I took a shot at the mayor, took a shot at that title, was unsuccessful, but I did it with the concept that if I didn't get that, I would go ahead and go back into try to win my city seat back, so to speak. So that's kind of why I'm here. Don't have anything against my competitor, so to speak, or anything of that nature. No axe to grind or anything silly stuff like that. There's really no place for that. You've been in government. I mean, you get it. There's really no place for having an axe to grind. But you go back to the same thing, that once you kind of get the bug of being a community service type individual, it just doesn't go away. You just don't lose and say, okay, well, I'm done.
One of the things that the city is looking at doing in the near term is increasing the fees, the user fees for trash collection. I know that you were quite involved with that. Tell us about your involvement when you were a councilman, and also tell us how are you happy with the scale, the graduated scale that they're going to use for the trash fee increases?
Well, when I was on the city council, one of my boards that I sat on was, or liaison to, was the landfill and the recycling center. And I'm very glad I sat on those, because I learned a lot. I learned a lot about DNR and regulations and things like that. When you first take that picture of, my God, we're going to raise fees, I didn't like that concept. I didn't like the idea of raising fees. But then you start to look at that we're going to have an issue here later on down in life with this landfill. When we close it, we're going to have $1 million+ we got to pay. And I don't have the exact
closure, post-closure fees.
Right, exactly. When you start to look at those...
And hold on, I don't mean to interrupt, but that's a real important point. We have a huge cost to close those facilities out there.
Right.
And right now, are we taking out money? I don't believe we are to cover those closure costs.
Right now, I think we are we're not taking enough money out at all. I think we're actually borrowing against that money, if I understand Jim correctly. So we need that money. Do we like to raise fees? Nope. I don't want to pay any more for my water. I don't want to pay any more for my trash than I have to. But if you look at our neighboring towns, we are at half of what most of our surrounding towns are. And the reason for that is we haven't had a raise in, I think it was, I don't have my numbers here, but 1990, basically it's about 7-8 years now is what it ends up being. 97, somewhere around. So the bottom line is we have the cheapest trash rates around. If we don't raise the cost of the fees now, eventually we're either going to have to start looking at having an outside service do it for us because we won't be able to afford it anymore. There's only two options, or we're going to have to cut services. And that means we're going to have our leaves not picked up anymore or something of that nature. Some way we're going to have to recapture that money.
Moving right along here,
Sure.
Greatest influence in your life, your number one role model?
Well, that's actually a good question. His name's John Carver. And I don't know if you know Mr. Carver, but Mr. Carver was a guidance counselor at Four Rivers Vocational School here in town. And he was, at that point, the person who intersected into my life at the right time. You know, I could have gone either way. I could have been a stand-up citizen, or I could have been a criminal. And he's the guy that basically came to me and said, you know, boy, you need to kind of wake up in life, and here's how. But he did it in such a good way that to this day, him and I still talk on every once in a while. And he was just there when a young 18-year-old kid needed somebody to talk to. So he's not an unsung hero or anything of that nature. I mean, he's not a movie star or somebody he's just an individual guy, you know.
You own a business called Paper Chase.
I do.
What do you glean from being a business owner? How do you take those skill sets and transfer them to the government level?
Well, you know, like any other small business, you know, when times get tough, you have to tighten the budget. That's number one. You take away management skills. You get used to making hard decisions and quick decisions. Now, when you talk about the city government, nothing is ever done quickly. You know, and that's probably the most annoying thing is, you know, I'm in my company, I make a decision and I live with that decision, right or wrong. And you kind of take those same decisions along with you and those same philosophies to the city government. You know, in a small business, you've got to make ends meet. You've got to cut when you can, but you got to know that by cutting things, you could potentially be cutting services. So you kind of learn a balance, and you learn that you take those same skills along to city government. You know, when you and I sat on there, we had a chance to go through the budget, and there were some cuts that had to be made. We didn't like making them, but I dare anybody to tell me we're not a stronger city because of that.
Almost every municipality across all 50 are having budgetary issues right now. Luckily, it appears that Washington is not suffering quite as much as some of the other communities. But no doubt tax receipts are going to continue to trend down.
Yep.
Property tax receipts are going to trend down. Where if it looks like we're going to have to do a serious round of budgetary cuts, give me some of the low-hanging fruit that you would shoot at.
Well, you know, the reality is if the city taxes don't increase, which I'm very confident that they're going to, I've had a chance this week to talk to many people who deal in that sort of thing, investments and things of that nature, and they're confident that the recession's over. We might not feel that. You know, it takes a while to get there, but they feel that way. So, but let's say what ifs. Let's look at the worst case scenario. You know, you got to understand that the city of Washington is a service type business. Everything we do is service. Trash pickup on down the line. So where do you cut? Do you want to cut service or do you want to cut people? No, you don't. But if you had to, boy, that'd be a tough one to call. Now, you can do things in the city to try to help them save money. But as you know, there are always going to be small things. It's not going to be, we're going to be able to save $1 billion here and there. A couple things you do is you make sure that you continue to watch your bids. You want to try to get the lowest bids if you can. You also want to keep looking at things. You know, when I was on the city council, I actually was looking at how to refine that recycling center. The recycling center doesn't make us any money. People don't understand it. It's a very you need to stop it.
No, it doesn't stop.
It's a very good feel good thing for the city of Washington to have recycling, and I'm very much for it because it's money or it's stuff we're keeping out of the landfill. But what you have to also understand is it does cost the city of Washington money to do that. Now, a couple concepts, a couple ideas that we had toyed with back then, and I'd like to continue on these, is let's look at the recycling. So let's just pick, we could talk all day just about that whole topic, but let's look at the landfill, or let's look at the recycling center. We had talked with a private company out of St. Louis about potentially coming in and showing us how to actually make money with our mulch. Instead of having these big mounds of mulch that sit out there and they end up catching on fire, to actually take that and maybe make 25 cents to 50 cents a load. Now that doesn't sound like a lot, but it's better than us losing money right now. So that's one concept, one idea. Another one is the glass. People right now we're recycling that. We actually have to pay to actually have that stuff hauled away. So let's throw it back in the landfill, because what we've found out over time is that actually glass is a very good compactor when it comes to the landfill. It's a very good filler, and glass is sand. So we're just basically returning it to the earth as well. These are all small things that I think, and that's how you're going to keep the cost down in the city of Washington, is just keep refining, just keep looking at things. There's not one big magic pill that's going to all of a sudden save us hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Clubs, affiliations, military. Talk to the listener about some of your associations.
I actually am in the Rotary Club here in Washington. It's a great organization. I'm actually also part of, I'm president of Business Networking International, which is basically just a business networking club where we help people find other business and so on and so forth. It's businesses working together. That's one philosophy I've had for a long time. It's not to alienate your competitor. It's actually to work with your competitor to figure out how we're both going to survive in this economy. And that's what's happened. Other things that I'm affiliated with, I'm no longer working with the Archdiocese. I've done that for a long time, just because of the fact that it's a lot of time and it's time to move on. I've been a youth leader for them for a long time. I'm not Catholic, as far as that go. I do attend the Baptist Church, but I was born and raised Catholic, and it's great to be part of that group. I just kind of outgrew it, so to speak. So I'm not that anymore. Other than that, I really don't have any other organizations that I'm part of.
You're with Backstoppers.
Backstoppers. Oh, I'm sorry.
Let's not forget that.
No, the Backstoppers. Backstoppers is actually one of my favorites, and I can't believe I just forgot that. I just totally slipped my mind. Backstoppers, yeah, I've been part of them for this going my third year now, and that is such a good organization. I was just floored when I really got involved to see what they actually do for these guys. We just had a marshal killed. Yeah. And I do believe right away what happens is they basically give them a $5,000 check. Now, you can't replace a life. You're not saying, but what it does, I mean, there are costs. And a lot of these police officers and firemen, they do it and they do their duty, but they don't make tons and tons of money.
Right.
So right away what we do is we actually give them a $5,000 check and say, here's to help on your expenses. Now you tell us what we can do for you. And then they even take it to the next step, and their children, they make sure that their children have the education that they need in life and things of that nature. So what a great organization.
Yeah, and I'll just put a free ad out anytime I can, talk about Backstoppers. I do as well. You can go to the web and look them up. But they do constantly need donors, because unfortunately we lose firemen, policemen, EMS guys, unfortunately way too frequently. And the $5,000, helps them pay the mortgage, the tuition, put food on the shelf for the wife a lot of times, and it's a great organization. But they go well beyond that. We talked about your business, so I won't talk about that. You grew up in Washington, is that correct?
Yep.
Do you see that giving you an advantage, growing up in Washington, more insight as to...
No, I don't think it gives you an advantage. I think it gives you a different perspective. And it's not a bad perspective, and it's not a good one. I've seen people who have been outsiders, who've lived in this community for a couple of years, come in and do a fantastic job. I don't think it gives you an advantage one way or another, but I think it gives you a different perspective on it. It's kind of like you've started as a kid, you've seen this town grow and change, and You know, so as you get into the council, you start to realize, you know, I remember when, you know, I always go back to those things and I talk about them, and it's I made that comment back then is, you know, I'm turning into my dad. You know, I remember my dad when I was a little kid going, well, I remember when the old farm out here was this and that and the other thing. You know, and I start to understand what he's kind of talking about now. He's kind of, it's somewhat of a reminiscing thing, but yet it gives you something different than somebody who just moves into town. They don't have that same, but it's not a bad thing. It's just a different thing.
You know, I'm a transplant. I'm not from here, but you're spot on. And what I'm always envious of, you know, guys like yourself is, you know, you can go through a grocery store. Hey Tom, hey Dick, hey Charlie. You know all these faces, sure. And I don't know that many of them. I mean, I've tried to get to know as many as I can in the 6 short years I've been here, but that I'll be the first to admit that gives you a huge leg up because you just know, you know all the people, and people say, "Oh, you'll take a left at the old Marquardt farm," and I'm like, "Okay, what street is that?"
Yeah, it could, you know, in theory, if you think about it, it could work against you or it could help you. You know, if you've grown up in this town and people like you. And they think that you're a person of integrity. Yeah, you're the guy who walks in, hey, how you doing, so on and so forth. Sure. But you could also be that guy who walks in and go, oh my God, don't talk to him.
This is a rarity, but it happens sometimes. It seems that we have, on the rarest of occasions, it seems like some councilmen are more inclined to others to miss council meetings. Mm-hmm. And should there be repercussions for that? And first of all, I understand that there's deaths in the family. I understand that we do vacations and we have business trips that we just can't get out of because at the end of the day, you have to take care of your family. Do you have any suggestions on how to try to get as full of compliance and attendance out of these councilmen as possible?
You know, my opinion on that is, I agree with you. If there's a death or something of that in the family, the council is put there and to represent his ward. Okay, if that council person is not showing up to his meeting, I want to know why the people who voted for him are going to reelect them.
There you go.
You know, is it me, the other councilman, to point fingers? No, I don't think so. I think it has to be up to the people who's doing the voting. Yeah. And it's basically people need to really be informed. I mean, that's with every issue, though.
And continuing the discussion about attendance, as we've seen in Wisconsin recently, some of the politicians decided not to show up to prevent a quorum, to prevent a vote. That can actually happen at our level as well.
It could.
Do you see that as a legitimate form of democratic expression?
You know, I saw that on your question. That was a little bit hard for me to answer. I don't know the answer to that question as far as that goes, to be honest with you. The way I look at it is if people are not showing up for their meetings to prevent a vote, I think that's wrong. You know, I've seen it happen before, and I just do. I believe that's a wrong concept to have. Once again, you're put there by the citizens of Washington to do a job, and I'm not about playing games. I think you need to show up, you need to vote on something, and go your separate ways.
Expanding the discussion of pluralities at City Council meeting, there was a move afoot, about 2 years ago, where there was a bill that they tried to pass that would have expanded the mayor's powers. In other words, right now you have to have, if it's a 4-4 tie, then the mayor can cast the winning vote.
Correct.
And the ordinance can pass.
Correct.
They wanted to lower the threshold whereby you wouldn't have to have what I call a super majority.
Right.
It would have lowered the number. Say it was a 3-3 tie. The mayor could have cast a deciding vote there. Would you support that type of an expansion of powers for a mayor?
You know, I don't like the concept that you have giving the mayor more power. However, if we got to go back to the last question. If people are missing meetings to prevent a vote, then I would support, like you said, a 3-3 majority, a simple majority, so to speak. And that's just the fact that we're there, going back to the same topic, we're there to get a job done. And if people are missing meetings because of that and not showing up, yeah, I would definitely support a simple majority. I don't like the idea of giving the mayor more power as far as that goes. But I do like the idea of getting stuff done. I mean, that's what we're there for. We had talked earlier about sometimes it takes forever to get something done in the city of Washington, or just in any city, because of politics and the things you have to do. I'm all for trying to streamline things, and if that means giving the mayor more power, I guess through the concept of, if I understand this correctly, having a 3-3 and they can vote on that 3-3, then I guess I would have to support that.
Moving on to the next question, are you aware that you're being supported publicly or privately by any of the people that are currently in power, the mayor or city councilman?
No, I can guarantee you I'm not.
Well, I asked that question earlier, yeah. So I feel like
I'm sure after the mayor's election I'm not being supported from that end of it.
Okay. Next question. Transparency in government.
Yep.
When you were in office,
yes.
we upgraded the cameras.
Yes.
You can find the city council meetings over the internet now on washmo.com. Gratuitous plug. And also you can go to the city website and download verbatim minutes.
All good things.
Okay.
All good things. They're all very good things as far as transparency.
Would you ever vote to roll back verbatim minutes?
Man, let's go take another look at that real quick. Verbatim minutes. Where I kind of stand on that from the beginning is I'm not real hyped about the idea of verbatim minutes, and the reason for that is my whole thinking there is very simple. When we passed that, we always had the opportunity to say I'd like it for the record. With that said, I get the concept of having everything typed out. I get it. I mean, I understand it. Would I roll it back? I really haven't thought about that too much, but if you think about it, I'm not real interested in doing that as well. I haven't. I'm okay with the. I think I voted against that, if I remember right, for verbatim minutes. I got to go back and look at that, but I think I voted against that. But I also support the council's decision on verbatim minutes. I think they've got used to it. I think I've gotten used to the concept, the idea. I think it's a dead issue in my mind, I guess, so to speak.
Right now we have multiple boards throughout the city, and it's probably, if you could point to one thing and say why is Washington so successful as a community, I would say it's the volunteerism. I would say it's
absolutely.
The people that get involved with these boards.
Yes.
But one of the grumblings I have heard, and I'm just going to transfer this to you, is that some people have been on these boards. It's almost a dynasty. They've been on them for decades.
Yeah.
Some people would like to see new people put on them. It's the mayor's discretion who goes on these boards, to a lesser extent city council. And there may be a third mechanism that escapes me, how people can get on these boards. But would you ever support term limits or an application process, where new people could be considered for these boards, or do you like status quo?
Well, no, I don't like status quo. First of all, I like young blood. I think the city needs young blood to begin with. Would I support it? Yeah, why not? And the reason I say that is very simple. But you got a problem when I say yes. The problem is sometimes it's hard to get people to volunteer for these boards. Okay?
Sure.
I think the option should always be there. And I'm saying maybe after 2 to 4 years, whatever decision we make, is that we reevaluate and say, are you ready to step down off that board? Do we have somebody that would fill that spot?
But what happens when, and it's kind of like the question I asked about city council earlier, some people habitually miss these boards. And
then why are they sitting on the board?
That's my question. As a city councilman, would you support an ordinance or a resolution that, 3 strikes and you're out, or I don't know, call it whatever you want, but because it's really not fair to the community if this person, and I have a very specific person in mind that I'm not going to mention the name, that has missed a lot of board meetings, and I know other people would like to be in that seat.
Okay. I will tell you, would I support it? And the answer is yes. And here's why. And I'm going to go back to using I told you earlier that I was in an organization called Business Networking International. One way we are successful and one way we find business for each other is because we have the 3 strikes out your rule. If you miss 3 meetings in 6-month period, you're out of the organization. And the reason for that is there's other people. We only allow one person in that group. So there's only one printer in that group, one insurance guy in that group. Somebody else wants that spot. And if there's other people, so it's the same philosophy. Would I support it? Absolutely.
Particularly if you have a resume of 5 or 6 people that
Sure.
would like to sit
Oh my
in that
God,
seat.
yeah.
You know, you
Oh yeah,
decide.
absolutely. Now you go back to the same thing. If it's a seat that's hard to fill, you got to kind of address that as it goes along. But sure, so, yeah, 3 strikes you're out. Why not?
Well, we'll move into the what's in Jeff's mind category here,
Okay.
and what the whole idea of these series of questions is kind of give the voter an
Absolutely.
idea of hypothetically how you would stand, actually how you would
Philosophies and all
stand. Yeah, there
sorts.
you go. So we'll just kind of go through these. Highway 100 beautification. It looks like we're going to go forward with that. Now it'll be roughly 150,000 at the local level, 750,000 total tax dollars. Tell me how you feel about.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is what the hell is our federal government doing? You know, we're putting money out there from a federal level. Okay. That's a whole nother philosophy. Why is the federal government putting beautification project grants out there? Well, we're trying to cut back and to save money on a federal level. Now, I know that this is a different topic, but so okay, let's roll back into this topic, beautification.
But they do connect, actually.
They do connect, very much so. I get what Walt is trying to do. I understand it. It's kind of like the King's Knight philosophy. You know, he's trying to do something very noble, and I get it. But I also am a philosophy of that if a city is eligible for a grant, we should always go after that grant. And the reason for that is I do believe that potentially that money will go to another city, will go to another town. So I am greedy. I will take whatever I can to make this town a better place. And if that is a beautification project, I will go for it.
That really, truly, that's kind of the people like myself who are grounded in the conservative philosophy. You know, that's the dilemma that people like myself run into because I know it's wrong.
Right.
I know the fact that the state is busted, the federal government is busted, and we're not seeing the best of times either here at the local level. What are we doing taking $150,000 of taxpayer money? And the only justification in my mind is if we don't do it, union will.
Union will.
And
I don't like it.
do we help them to, because whether we want to accept it or not, we're competing against Union,
Absolutely.
New Haven,
I was just about to say
Martinsville.
the same thing. Yeah, that's the problem. We're competing. We're competing against other towns.
Yeah.
Okay.
And these are the things that makes it really difficult being a councilman.
Sure
These are the tough decisions that you guys have to make. But at the end of the day, we can't look at ourselves in the mirror and say, woe unto those people that are wasting taxpayer dollars, because to some extent we're guilty of it. I don't buy for 1 second that this is a stimulative in any nature. I don't see how this stimulates for 1 second. And the only argument, and it is unfortunately a powerful argument that you mentioned, we don't take it, someone else will.
Right.
That dilemma has to be fixed at the state level.
It really does, and that's what I was going to say too. The problem is you and I sitting here today is not going to fix that problem. It's going to take a collective group of people to fix that.
It's an interesting discussion, though. No smoking ban.
No way.
Thank you.
I won't do it.
Toll bridge for Highway 1. And Emily put this in perspective.
Yeah.
The bridge, when it was built back in the 1930s, I think things like 80 years old, they used toll money to
make it
construct
happen.
that bridge, and the tolls continued.
I actually have an original ticket from that toll booth.
Do you really?
Yes.
So,
Not me personally.
I was going to
Somebody gave
say,
it to me.
man, you're looking pretty good for 80 years
somebody
old.
had gave it to me. They came from Schulte's Bakery and wanted to make copies of it one day. So I actually kept a copy of those.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But, would you support a toll if that get us built our bridge built 5 years sooner?
That would be a last resort. Now, here's what I would have to look for on that. That's always been one of the things kicked around. First of all, the state has no money. Okay? It's one of the problems. My question is, before I would have to honestly answer that question, what would be the economic impact on the city of Washington if we put a toll up on that bridge? If we do that, would the people in Augusta, would the people in Marthasville start driving the other direction to go to their Walmarts instead of going to ours? And I don't know the answer to that. Would I support it? I would leave it on the table. I mean, that's as honest as I could be.
What would be the economic impact if the bridge fell into the river?
Oh, it would be terrible. Oh, it'd be terrible. And you're right, absolutely.
Because the sister bridge is now in shambles in Minnesota.
You betcha. And I would not, that's what I'm saying, I would not rule out a toll being put on that bridge.
Yeah.
That's a great question. I think it needs to be investigated a little bit more, but I definitely would not rule that concept out.
And the question du jour, Camp Street Bridge. Let's talk about that.
Sure. Let's go to that one. That's right there in the ward.
Yeah. If it was to come up again next year, and say you were elected to the council, would you support it?
Let's go back to the circumstances. First of all, the first time I voted no. Second time we had a potential to get a grant on it. To be a voting consistency on what I said earlier, I will take any grant I can get. Okay? So that leaves it on the table. I will not rule out not putting that bridge in there. I will tell you that it's not in the budget. Okay? Does that mean it's never going to happen? Doesn't mean that bridge, regardless if I'm on there, regardless if John's on there, that doesn't mean that it's never going to be open.
And the other question, and sure, also, do you think that that's the best access point in that area? Where do you, if we had Jeff's world, Jeff is in charge of the world, where would you like to see an access point out there? You know,
if we go back to the same, is it the best access point? Given, to get a second interest, maybe it's the cheapest. I don't know. Could it go to International Drive? In theory, that would be the best accent point. However, we can't connect up to International Drive. So I guess, yeah, well, let me retract my answer. Is it the best point? Yes. Probably, given the topography, as I guess I should say, the hills that are behind there. If you've ever driven behind Walmart, you'll see that it's straight up and down. So either that second exit would actually have to come out of Camp Street Bridge, or you're going to have to go to International somehow. Maybe you go to 9th Street, but it'd be a ways to wind around that a little bit. I guess from a cost standpoint, that's going to be the cheapest. So maybe if you're looking at a cost standpoint, yeah, maybe that's the best.
Where do you think the growth is going, though? Is it going Camp Street area?
No.
Or is it going directly east along
It's going directly.
corridor?
It's going towards that corridor. Somebody, regardless if you cannot, I mean, there's problems connecting up with the International Drive right now because technically they say it's not a street. It's a park entrance. Somebody's going to make it happen.
All right.
Somebody with the right money is going to make it connect in there. Okay?
All right.
So that's the best place.
The other question is these days lowest bidder.
Yeah.
There's a lot of discussion about maybe not using the lowest bidder, particularly when it comes terms to local contractors bidding. How do you feel about lowest bid?
Okay, you made 2 points there: local contractors and lowest bidding.
Okay, let's back up. Let's specify lowest bid.
Okay. First of all, I think anybody that's sitting on the city council should always try to get the lowest bid possible. I mean, that's why you're going to save money. My philosophy is it's not always the best bid. And let me use a scenario real quick if I can. We have 2 bids out there. We have 3 bids out there. One of the bids, the lowest bid, is, I'm going to put this politely, is coming up from Mexico to put a new roof on the library. I don't think that
Mexico,
would be...
Missouri?
No, I'm talking about Mexico, period. And we've had this scenario, not with the city government, but we've had this scenario in other towns where people have come up from Mexico through Texas and basically gypsies. Okay, that's what it is. They come up, they end up putting on a roof, or they end up doing asphalt work. 6 months later, it ends up going to hell. And that's happened. That has actually happened. I know 3 people that's actually happened to. So, they were the lowest bidder. That's not the best bid, in my opinion. Now, if it is a local company, if it is somebody who you have 2 equal people and both of them have the same experience, they've both been in business 20 years, then yeah, it should go to the lowest bidder. But you always have to, in the back of your mind, really kind of look at these bids and make sure that you're always comparing apples to apples. You know, and that's where I'm at. But I would say 99.9% of the time, we always go for the lowest bid.
The local or the staff, they qualify these bids. They have to be not only lowest bid, but they also have to be a qualified bidder.
Right.
Isn't that part of our job to make sure that if they're on the bid list, they're qualified in the first part?
I think so. They should be qualified. You know, they definitely, if that's what they're spelling out for us, then they should be qualified, pre-qualified. What's qualified, though? I mean, what are the qualifications?
That's subjective, and there's a lot of the problem. I mean, the Reinhold and the Gershner is a perfect example of where, by virtue of the fact that Gershner continually gets all these contracts throughout the state, it's really tough for anybody else to hold up a resume and say, well, wait a second, you know, we can do this, but we just don't get a chance to.
No, you're right. You're right.
And that was a perfect example.
It was a great example.
You know, the city they picked the higher contractor, even though the spread was not that great.
No, it wasn't that great.
But they still went with the higher.
You know, the people need to know. I voted for Gerstner on that one. I voted that. I think I was
doing that. What was your rationale for vote for?
Because
those
they
guys?
had more experience. Because of the experience behind it. I do believe. I got to remember which one. There was one of them that I know the mayor vetoed that I said no, I wouldn't let him veto that. I can't remember what bid that was. But anyway, to move on.
One of the great things of turning 50 is
you lose everything. I know. I get that whole idea.
You're approaching.
But that was one, I do believe, and I'll go back and check my records, but I do believe that's the one where I voted against using Reinhold. Just because of the simple fact that I felt that the other person had more experience and it wasn't worth $300 difference to me. I think they did a fine job. You know, I know that there were some little bumps at the end that they took care of and rectified, and it all checked out fine. So, yeah.
Yeah, I know the state goes through a really specific checklist of items to qualify those guys.
But I think it becomes...
And I stood out there to make sure...
Oh, yeah, I know you guys did. You did a great job with it.
I want to make darn sure that...
But I think you have to watch when somebody just says, I am completely for the lowest bid.
Yeah, and I think quality... Well, and yeah.
And you don't know.
Yeah, that's true. Prevailing wage, how do you feel about prevailing?
Explain that a little bit further.
Prevailing wage basically means... I think it's kind of shorthand for union wage. Mm-hmm. Should the city be compelled when they're hiring a contractor to put up something, a building, a fence, whatever, should that contractor be compelled to pay a prevailing wage, which is typically higher than the market wage?
No. And here's why I say. There are a lot of good... What is prevailing wage? I mean, you have to define what is prevailing wage.
Yeah, I think the states defined it at the state level.
Okay.
I'm not for sure on that, but I'm...
The reason I say that, the problem I have with that is there's a lot of good businesses here locally. They pay close to prevailing wage, but if you're saying I have to pay $20 or $30 per hour in order to get this bid, and maybe you're paying $19 an hour, you know.
I gotcha. That camera will run out of memory here pretty soon, so I'm going to try to push this along.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Just quickly, sprinklers. There is some talk at the city level.
Won't support it.
Thank you. Red light cameras.
I'm glad they're gone.
Thank you. By the way, they took them down last night at midnight. I don't know if you knew that.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
In the dark of night.
In the dark of night.
Yeah.
Mandatory occupancy inspections.
It's here. It needs to be more consistent.
Okay.
Need to continue the consistency.
Stonecrest, we've got to talk about it. Let's keep it as short as possible. Yeah. Just describe your role, Reader's Digest condensed version.
Okay, I was part of that. Initially, I endorsed it. I retracted that endorsement after I realized what I was endorsing. It was a great experience for me. I'm not for multi-big complex subsidized housing. I get it. We got subsidies here in town. Stonecrest was a great learning point for me, a great learning curve.
Okay, TIF. How do you feel on TIFs?
I'm really on the fence on that, and here's why. TIFs is another government handout that can be taken advantage of, and I've seen it taken advantage of. We've got a couple here in town. I'm not saying that they took advantage of it, but what I'm saying is long term, I'd like to see how those TIFs that were handed out do. You know, we don't have a track record on it yet. Okay, we can go on TIFs all day.
Hey, just quickly contrast yourself to your opponent. What do you see as a strength, your strengths? I mean, why should I, vote for you over your opponent? Just a quick contrast.
You know, we're two different personalities, okay? And that is one of our biggest differences. It's not to say that John and I have always voted differently on a lot of things. As a matter of fact, we have voted consistently on a lot of things. On the things that we voted different with, that's where your integrity kind of comes in a little bit. How do you handle it? How do you represent yourself? How do you represent the people? How do you represent the people that objected to what you're doing, saying no? You might have said yes, they said no. John is unfortunately, I can't say it any nicer, but he's let his mouth get himself in trouble many times. You know, I'm not to say that he's a bad guy, but the problem is you need to represent yourself in a professional manner in all cases and scenarios. And John has, we're going to go back to the Stonecrest part. John has actually
Uh,
put things out there that were not true, and
specifically just give me one.
Well, one of the things that I'd actually have to go back to his blog on washmo.com to actually make sure that I'm not saying anything word for word. But anybody can go back to Washmo. It's there, what he said and what I said, not to really drudge that up, because that's one thing I don't want to do in this election is really get negative, and I want to stay positive. And people want John in there, at least the people had a chance. You know what I'm saying? So
fair enough.
We're just personalities are different.
Let's see, what else? Give me an idea how you could save, we'll conclude with this here, how you would save the taxpayer money.
I think we talked.
And bring jobs to the community.
Okay.
Rolling into one.
Okay, let's do that. Let's talk about bringing jobs. First of all, it's my feeling that it's not physically the job of the city to bring jobs here. It's to actually set the stage, okay? And the way we do that is to make sure that what we've already done in the past. It's not that I'm reinventing the wheel, but we need to continue that, is to make sure that the city of Washington continues to make sure that we have what they call shovel-ready projects, okay? When we get these businesses here, let's make sure we don't give away the town. Let's make sure we don't have tax breaks that are going to kill the city. Let's make sure, and I'm sure they're doing a good job at that. But I will tell you, and I had this conversation with Tim the other night, as a small business owner, he made a comment to say that, maybe we should offer the small business guy a 2% tax decrease or something like that. But my answer is no, I don't want a small tax decrease. What I want from my city is to make sure my streets are taken care of. I want my sidewalks taken care of. I want my snow removed. You do that for me, I'll bitch all day long about my taxes, but I will still pay them.
I'll push the...
There you go. There you go. I will take care as a small business owner of making jobs happen around here. That's all I want.
Jeff Mohesky, thanks, man. Appreciate
rock
it.
on. We'll see how it pans out.
Big Mike interviews and commentary. I hope you've enjoyed it. We've got Kat Shaw coming up, and can't think of the gentleman's name. Oh well, I'll come up with it. And this will be on Ustream and also on YouTube. I'll get that out to people as quickly as I can. Thanks again. Get this shut off here. Stop recording.
Cool.